It's an absolute pleasure to welcome the Chelmsford City owner, Spencer Gore, to the From the Club podcast. Thanks for coming on, Spencer.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Spencer, tell us everything we need to know about you in 60 seconds.
Crikey. So I'm married. I've got three kids. I live in Essex. I'm a football fan. So I'm a Chelmsford City fan, obviously, a Liverpool fan and an England fan. I run a few businesses. So I run the European Medical Journal. I now run the American Medical Journal as of this year. Um, what else do you need to know about me? Yeah, that's about it, I guess, in the very short sort of summary of me.
With Spencer, you, of course, have a life before and outside of football. Just give us a walk through what that looks like up to the point where you decided to buy a football club.
Yeah. So, well, I won't go back. So basically, my life's changed in 2008 for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I decided to set up my first business, but I also had 3 months non-compete clause from my old company. So I drove down to my local football team, Chelmsford City, that I'd followed since I was a kid, and I'd been to watch as a kid in the old ground in New Riddle Street, and then when they were sort of nomads in Malden and Billericay. I never saw them in Malden; they were only there a short period, but saw them at Billericay, and then when they came back to Chelmsford. And I just walked down there one day. In fact, I think I sent a message on the website saying, "Look, can I help?" And the commercial manager said, "Come down and we'll have a chat." So I got chatting to this guy, Aaron Desmond, who's a lovely guy, and I ended up helping out with various different things down there. And I published. I was setting up a publishing business, so I published this like an old school football annual for the club called City Life. We did it for 2 years, and it was free of charge to the fans. So we gave something like 5,000 copies out to the fans free of charge, and we got commercial sponsors in, and we went and interviewed ex-players and put all the sorts of interesting articles in there. So that was 2008. I I got involved in another business in 2012, European Medical Journal. I then launched a couple of other businesses, one in Amsterdam, um, one in Dublin. I've just this year launched the American Medical Journal in Miami. Um, I've got quite a decent sized shareholding in a brewery and two bars in Copenhagen. I'm on the advisory board of the University College of London Management School. As I said, I've got three kids, so I'm always at sporting events and things like that. So that's sort of my life outside of football and before I took over the football club.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite one thing being a football fan, then obviously being a football owner. When and where did the idea of wanting to buy a football club sort of originate? Where did that come from?
I'm not sure exactly when it started, but I've always loved football. I was never the greatest footballer by any means, as any of my ex-teammates will tell you. But I enjoyed playing, and I was very, very committed to playing. I'd try and miss as few games as possible. I'd go on holidays on like a Sunday to Sunday, so I could play on the Saturday and not miss two games and things like that. Um, and I ended up running my local village teams when I was still playing, when I was a young age. Um, I ran a couple of five-a-side teams for my mates. And then when I went to university, I guess that was when it first became a little bit more um, sort of like running a football club. I became the football club captain at UCL, and we had 7 teams, so the best part of 100 odd players. We had quite a decent sized budget. Our home ground was at Shenley, where Arsenal were training at the time. They hired the pitches off us and they trained there. So we had 4 or 5 full-time groundsmen, fantastic pitches. Then they moved and Watford moved in. And then I became the sports officer there. So I was involved with the sort of the behind the scenes side for a long time. And we were the first university team in London to have a shirt sponsor that I organised. We were the first university team in London to have a UEFA qualified coach. So I always looked at improving the clubs I was involved with. And then when I got involved with Chelmsford in 2008, it really started taking off. And after a couple of years there, I wanted to be more involved. And they weren't looking for new people on the board then. So I ended up getting involved with Heybridge Swifts, who are another Essex non-league side. And I joined the committee there and helped run them and the reserve team. Then I did join the board at Chelmsford City for a little while. And then I became the major sponsor of the club during COVID because they were short of money, like most clubs were. So we took on the naming rights of the ground, and all of this was really a plan from probably about 2008, so I could learn how football clubs were run. So if I ever did get the opportunity, it would be there. And the first time I actually properly committed to buying a club was 2008. Sorry, 2012. I sat down with a business coach, and pretty much, I think it was the first session we had. He asked me a question that if I won the lottery and it was topped up every night, so I never had to work again, and I'd done all the gone traveling around the world, given money to charity, looked after the family. He said, "What gets you out of bed in the morning?" And I said, "Well, I'm too old to be a professional footballer. We'll skip the fact I wasn't good enough. We'll just say I'm too old.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not going to be a professional manager, but I'd love to own a football club." And so since then, we said, right, okay, well, any businesses you set up, they become your vehicles to buying a football club. And so since 2012, I've actively been working on trying to buy a football club, and it was always going to be Chelmsford City if I could get it.
I mean, obviously you're a businessman, and obviously you're looking for opportunities, and you can obviously see value in where you can take the journey with Chelmsford City. What was it that made you choose this club, as Chelmsford? Was it because of your affinity with the club, or did you see that opportunity for growth? What was it about the club that made you make that decision?
Um, yeah, I mean, primarily, I grew up in Chelmsford, a little village just outside of Chelmsford. I used to go to Chelmsford every sort of Friday night for drinks, and it's my local team. Um, so that was the main driver. Over the years since I've been actively looking to buy a football club, I've had talks with a number of different clubs. I've been offered clubs in leagues a couple below. I've tried to buy Chelmsford once before, about 2 or 3 years ago. I was one of the preferred bidders for Southend United at one point a couple of years ago, before the consortium took that on. And yeah, long story. Um, but really, it was always Chelmsford that I wanted because it's my local team. And I looked at it and thought, well, actually, when I was on the board previously, I looked at things like the population of Chelmsford compared to other towns and cities in the country. And if you ranked teams on population, Chelmsford came out near the bottom of the championship. So I was thinking, well, we've got a huge number of people in this catchment area. There's nothing stopping us to get the fans there. Um, and it's a pretty affluent area. It's not sort of a deprived area, and it's a very fast growing city. So there's huge opportunity here. So those two things together made me think that Chelmsford was the ideal scenario. I just didn't know that I'd get it or not.
I've heard many people, many football club owners talk about how broken the model of the business side of football is. There are very few clubs that are able to operate in a way that breaks even, let alone make a profit. I'm assuming that you haven't taken on this project just to throw all of your money away. How do you plan to lead it differently, Spencer?
Um, well, that's a good question. So, first of all, I'm not saying I want to throw my money away, but I am looking at this as a hobby rather than a money-making sort of a venture. I'm not in this to make money. Um, I'm looking at this as my hobby. I love football, and like most people, you end up paying for your hobbies. So, this might be a slightly more expensive hobby than most people have, but it is a hobby for me to do. So I'm more than happy to keep investing money in this. And I've got a business partner. So I own 60% of the club. I've got a business partner, Dan Watkins, that's been involved for a number of years. That's very like-minded. He's just a local say businessman. He's the CEO of JP Morgan out in Asia. Um, but he's looking to support his local club and help the community. So we're both in it to sort of to look at it as a hobby rather than a business venture. That said, there's some really basic stuff that can be done to make this club much more efficient than it is. It's been particularly um, successful off the pitch compared to the budget for the last few years. It finished second in the National League South last year, fifth the year before, with a budget that was below halfway, in terms of the size of the budget. So it's been very, very successful on the pitch in terms of the money spent, pound per point, if you want to call it. But off the pitch, it's not been run as a business at all. It's just been run by some volunteers, a lot of really hard-working volunteers, and a few employees. But it's not been run really as I would run a business. So I think there's huge opportunities for us to massively increase the revenue. But as I said, we're not looking to do this to make money. So all the revenue we make will be looking to improve the club as a whole, not just the first team, but the infrastructure and everything that goes with the club.
Yeah. We've seen some big clubs, big traditional historic clubs, struggle financially in the division that you're in. One of those, of course, being Torquay last season. Has it surprised you how much it costs to run a football club? And if so, give us some examples of things that are really expensive that fans probably don't even appreciate.
Um, it's not necessarily surprised me how much it costs to run a football club. It's maybe surprised me a little bit that I'm paying for some of the stuff from last season to run a football club, but that's by the by. Um, I mean, the costs. There's costs involved that when you just look at it as a football club, you wouldn't think of. When you actually sit down and think of running it as a club, you're like, yeah, okay, of course that makes sense. But you've got to travel to the away games. We played Truro last weekend, so you throw in another few grand for a hotel stop, and that's not just for players. We've got one of our media team down there to do the videoing and the radio, and you've got to give all of these guys food while they're down there for 2 days instead of 1 day. We've gone to a hybrid training, so we used to train Tuesday and Thursday night. We now have an optional training Monday and Friday for the guys that can make that. Um, but you've got to throw in breakfast beforehand, lunch afterwards. You've got to pay the groundsman to make sure the ground's ready. You've got to have security guard. I've got invoices just coming in for security, which when you just go and turn up and watch a game, you don't even think about things like that
Yeah.
necessarily. All of a sudden,
No.
you've got a few £1,000s on security guards. You've got, I don't know, you name it. There's a cost for everything. But when you sit down and, I've literally today been looking at my budget for EMJ, and I'm putting one together for the football club because there just wasn't one really. And actually, the list of things in there, when you look at publishing journals, which is what I do in my sort of day job, there's all sorts of costs behind the scenes, but the readers just see the finished publication. Well, it's a bit like
Yeah.
that with a fan at a football club. You just see the 90 minutes on the pitch, and you don't necessarily think about all of those costs that have gone into to getting the CCTV costs, the air conditioning costs that are broken, or the plumbing in the toilets that's broken, or you don't necessarily see all of these costs. So it's not surprising. It's just some of the things you wouldn't necessarily think of.
It's really helpful. Thank you. I've heard you say that you've got ambitions to take Chelmsford City into the Football League. What foundations do you need to put in place to make that ambition a reality going forward?
Um, well, on the pitch, I mean, we've not had the start to the season we would have wanted, obviously, with the exception of the 5-1 win last night against Maidstone, which was fantastic. But in the games I've seen, and I've been to all the home games, we haven't been a million miles off. It's a whole group of new players because we lost pretty much everyone, barring I think 3 or 4 players last year because we finished second and didn't get promoted. The players all went on to higher levels pretty much, which is great for them. So we're starting with a fresh squad of players this season, and it's taken them a little while to bed in. There's still some signings that we're after, hopefully. Um, so I think on the pitch we're not a million miles off. We've got a great management team with Robbie and Mickey and Adam there. Um, so I don't think we're a million miles off there. And I think once we've actually got some of the stuff off the pitch sorted, we'll be able to look at the budget again. It's a higher budget than it was last year, and I think there perhaps it's maybe a little bit more wiggle room once we start getting things running properly. Off the pitch, there's a huge amount we can do. It's what's brilliant about this is that every day I see things that I think, yeah, we're better than we were yesterday. And someone asked me, if I regretted buying a football club the other day or whether I regretted buying Chelmsford. And I was like, no, if I'd have gone in and bought Liverpool or any of the top teams, you'd be there going, I'm not really sure how I can make this club much better. It's at the pinnacle of its level. But I look at Chelmsford every day and I've got I'm getting about 500 emails a day, a week at the moment to do with the football club, and every one you just think, oh yeah, we could improve that by doing that. We could improve that. We were down playing a team recently, and we were talking to their commercial manager, and they've done probably, roughly speaking, from what they said, 10 times more revenue this season already than we've done. And they're not one of the teams that I would class as a big team financially in this league. So, there's just so much that we can be doing once we get the right structure in place. We made a deliberate decision to come in for the first month or so and not make any changes unless they were, desperately needed in terms of, if we didn't have the right insurance or something like that, we'd obviously do it. But otherwise, we just wanted to really understand why the club was doing things, and how it helped the club, or how it improved the club. And if it didn't, we'll look at changing it. But we didn't want to just come in and make changes for the sake of doing it. So we're just literally just over a month in. We're nearly finished doing that, and we'll start making some changes over the next month or two.
Yeah. You've touched on some of the things that you're involved with outside of football. Obviously, you're a very busy man. What's your approach? How hands on are you able to be as a football club owner?
Well, it's been a bit of a start. So I was on holiday when the deal actually completed. So my wife and kids didn't see a huge amount of me on our holiday because I was on the phone to solicitors and accountants and the National League and people like that. And then I've been away a couple of times since then. So it's been quite unusual for me that I've not had so much time in the office as I would normally have. But I hadn't thought I'd be as hands-on as I was going to be. In fact, when I first started talking about buying the club, a few months ago, I didn't think I'd even be chairman. Um, but since I've started looking under the bonnet, so to speak, I can just see so much that needs doing and can be improved quite easily that I've made myself chairman for at least this year. Um, and I've been really, really hands-on. Well, I try and understand everything that takes place, put together some proper forecasts, put together some proper processes. There's no real processes there. Things are done but not mapped out. So if anyone's hit by a bus, no one knows what they did. Um, so there's lots of things like that that I want to get right, get those foundations for National League South right, and for us to push on. And that's going to take a lot of time. I think that will take the best part, if not all of this season, just to get right.
Yeah.
So hands
With all
on,
of the
very
different,
hands on.
yeah, very hands on. Yeah. Well, with all the different caps that you wear, what does a typical day look like for you, Spencer?
Busy. Um, yeah, I've got a business in Europe, I've got a business in America, and I've got a football club that plays at the weekend. So it's 24/7, 7 days a week. It really is. But that doesn't massively change from my life beforehand. I'm a bit of a workaholic, if that's the right phrase. I check my emails as soon as I wake up in the morning. I check them the last thing at night. And summarizing it quite nicely, I got a text off the outgoing chairman on the 11th of May, day before my birthday, at 7:45 in the morning on a Saturday that was. And I was sat in the car park of a golf driving range while my son was having his golf lessons and I was working. And he sent me a text saying, I'm resigning as chairman and therefore we're selling the club. Would you be interested? So yeah, that's me. I sit in the car and work on a Saturday when my son's at golf. I work 24/7. I really enjoy what I do. I'm very, very fortunate that I've got a job that I really, really enjoy, and I'm enjoying it even more now. I've got the football club. Um, so my typical day is really just working through. If it's not EMJ, it's AMJ, or it's the football club, and I tend to spend my time either at the club, whether it's a match day, or I've been sort of basing myself down there on Fridays a little bit, or in the office in London. Today I'm working from home because I just got back from Dublin quite late yesterday. I'm off to Miami for our to go to our offices over there the week after next. So I like variety. So yeah, this works really well for me. Doing a little bit of everything keeps me interested in everything.
Yeah. Whenever I speak to somebody who's really busy and is effective in doing so, I always like to pick their brains and get some sort of, tips off of them. And, obviously everyone talks about a work-life balance. What advice would you have for anybody in terms of, managing such a busy lifestyle and obviously, managing their life at the same time?
Yeah, I really hate that phrase work-life balance. just personally, it's just my opinion. But for me, that sounds like the yin and the yang. What have I got to sacrifice so I can enjoy things over here? So, I don't want to work this hard because I want to spend time enjoying my life. Life's too short. Enjoy all of it. Um, there's a job out there that you'll love. You sell sporting memorabilia. You do podcasts with people in sport. That's a pretty cool job to me. That's not work. That's a job. Sorry, that's not your job. That's just life. You're enjoying your life. I get to go to football with my kids and my wife and my friends on a Saturday. I get to go to Miami and work in a hotel and an office right next to the beach with a pool on the top of the roof of our office. I get to do really cool things that I enjoy doing. So I don't need the balance. It's all part. Work-life balance for me is just another word for life. And if you get your life right, the rest of it just comes easily, I think. I make that sound quite. I know it's not as easy as that in real life, but for me, that's how I've managed my life. I've made sure that I only do things I enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Really good advice, Spencer. The National League South and the division that you guys find yourself in is an extremely competitive league, and we've already seen just a handful of games in that anyone can beat anyone on their day. What are the club's targets for this season in year one, Spencer?
Um, I'm massively ambitious. I really am massively ambitious, and I think I can achieve anything. So I have to be very careful when I'm talking openly because I just have these, yeah, we can do that, and then people sort of take that as gospel. And I did a fans Q&A a couple of weeks ago, and I got asked this very question. I said, well, we finished second last year, and we've got a bigger budget, so why wouldn't we be looking at first? And I got a little bit of let's call it feedback from one of the fans saying, we've had broken promises from chairman in the past. What this was before we won 5-1 last night. We'd not had a great start to the season. They're like, why don't you just be a bit more realistic and not make promises you can't keep? And I was like, well, firstly, I didn't promise anything. You asked me a question, I answered it. My ambition for me for this season is to win the league because we were second last year and we're spending more money on it. Um, I can't promise that. The manager can't promise that. The players can't promise that. We can never promise success, but what we can do is say that we think we've got everything in place to work towards that. Now, when I made that statement, I hadn't dug into the club as much as I thought. I didn't know as much as I now know. I hadn't realised it was going to take me quite as long to get things straight. But actually, I think with the players we've got, I think with the opportunity we've got to grow the commercial side of things, that promotion is definitely the target that we're working towards this year.
Yeah, yeah. Like you, a good friend of both our Simon Leslie has bought a club in the National League South in Eastbourne Borough. What advice has he been able to give you, and how much are you looking forward to playing Borough in just a week or so's time?
I'm definitely really looking forward to them. And actually, this just sort of sums up how much I really didn't expect to be buying the club at the moment. We've got a perimeter board at their ground because I did it for a favour for him. So I'm looking forward to playing at their ground as much as ours, so I can see our perimeter board there. Something's been great. He asked me to get involved down at Eastbourne, and like I said earlier, much as I'd love to have got involved with the club, I wanted to get involved with a club that was on my doorstep, so I could be very hands on. Um, but he's been absolutely brilliant. He texted me last night to tell me how happy he was that we got our result, and he's messaged me after I think every single game this season, just to check in on me. He's not necessarily given me much advice. He's given me some thoughts, and his thoughts on how much opportunity there is, not just for Eastbourne or for Chelmsford, but for the National League itself. He thinks there's way more we can be doing as a collective than we're doing at the moment. Um, so I'm looking forward to getting a bit more involved with that. I haven't really had a lot to do with that so far, but he's just been very, very supportive as he has been with me for 10 years. I used to play football with Simon. That's how I first met him. The pair of us. You wouldn't know it to look at us now, but we were both footballers back in the day. And I used to play football with him. So I've actually scored past him, but it's not something to brag about because he was in the same team as me. Um,
Did you see the penalty you scored the other day
I
on Instagram?
did, and I did, and we've had a
Incredible,
little
wasn't
chat. We've had a little chat about that. I think we might have a little competition at some point. Yeah,
it?
definitely.
That'd
We're
be
both
good. That'd be
we're
good.
both goalkeepers by trade that fancied ourselves out on pitch, so there could be a little penalty shootout competition there.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, we'll have to look forward to that.
Yeah.
You've obviously hired people in a number of different industries, and you are known for for being good at building successful teams. What traits do you look for in a person, and how have you been able to carry that into football when you're, recruiting new players and obviously people within the club?
Yeah. So for my businesses, I mean, Chelmsford City is one of my businesses, I guess now. But from my previous businesses, um, we learned probably 9 years ago, something like that, that just recruiting good people wasn't going to be right for us. We needed people that are fully aligned. As I said before, life's too short to not have fun. And if you're working with people that are good, but you don't get on with, they're not aligned with you, you're not going to have fun. And so we do a summer ball every year, and we had a keynote speaker come along who was very high in the US military, and he said, you need to recruit the right people, not the best people. And that really resonates with me because we go out and we recruit people on their values, not their competencies. So if I'm advertising a job and you apply, as long as you've got the skills or even the ability to learn the skills, that's fine because we can teach you how to do any job. That's pretty. There's nothing we do that's rocket science. So we can train you to do a job, but we'll never change your values. Your values are ingrained in you from almost birth, from childhood, from a very young age, by whoever brings you up, whether that's your parents, grandparents, aunts, or uncle. It doesn't really matter. But whatever their values were will be ingrained into you, and it's nigh on impossible to change those. So what we're looking for is people with the values that align to us. Now, there's no wrong values. Your values are right for you. My values are right for me. If they're not aligned, it won't work. If they are aligned, it's probably going to work. So we recruit when we do our recruitment. The last stage we do is what we call a values interview. And to put that into a nutshell, we're looking for people that we have three values and then a fourth sort of unofficial one. But it's you've got to be 100% bought in, so 100% buying from you to us and from us to you. We've got to really be bought into you're the right person for this job and that we can help you become a gold medal winner or the best version of yourself. But you've got to be entirely bought into what we're trying to achieve and the way we're trying to achieve it. Then it's make sure you look after your own shit. Do your job and do it properly. Simple as that. And then it's go the extra mile. So once you've done your job, make sure all your colleagues are doing all right and they don't need any help. And if they do need help, give them some help. Now, because we recruit lots of nice people, we sometimes fall into the trap of people are always offering to help you out because they're nice people and they can see you're struggling. And then it gets to the end of the day and they haven't done their job. So that's why it's really important you do in that order. So you've got to be bought in, look after your own shit, and then go the extra mile. And then the fourth unofficial part is and have fun. You've got to enjoy doing it, as I've said quite a few times. Life is too short not to have fun. So that's how that's how we've done it for the last few years at EMJ and my other businesses. We haven't really had a chance to implement that in the football club because we've only been there a month and we haven't recruited anyone yet other than players. I've left Robbie to get on with recruiting players, Robbie and Adam, because that's what they do. But I have spoken to Robbie about it, and he's very like-minded, and he's the way he recruits and the values that he has up in the changing room are not a million miles from that. So it turns out we've got a lot of players that really are bought in, that are doing their own job, and they're going the extra mile. Yeah, the effort last night was unbelievable. So we will be doing a lot more with that over time, but we're fairly aligned with that anyway at the moment.
Yes. No, that's great stuff. And of course, in the world of football, it only takes one player to be a bad egg, and obviously it can affect the whole changing room, can't it? So it's such an important
Massively, and
thing
it's not
to
even
make sure
bad eggs.
people buy into.
Sometimes it's if our target's there and someone's just slightly
Yeah,
off,
yeah,
by the
yeah.
time you go over there, you're way off. So you've got to keep people aligned all the time.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thanks for that. I know it's early days, but I know also that personal development's huge for you. How have you had to develop since becoming a football club owner, and what are you working on now?
Um, well, I'm always looking at personal development. As I said, I'm off to Miami in a few weeks to the office, but I'm going to a couple of conferences out there on personal development. I've I've been I've been reading as many books as I can by football owners. I've been watching as much telly programs on being a football club. I just finished watching Mission to Burnley, which I really enjoyed. I've watched the Leeds one. I've watched I can't think what else I've watched. Loads of them. I've been, what else have I been doing? I've been talking to as many as many football club owners as I can. Um, so I'm obviously Simon. I know Robbie Cowling at Colchester United reasonably well. He's called me a couple of times and we've had conversations. Um, I had lunch with Barry Hearn a couple of weeks ago. I was picking his brain for as much as I could. Uh, Weirdly, a guy that I play six aside with on a Thursday night is also the majority shareholder of Luton. I've known him for a long, long time. He was in the same team as Simon Leslie. Funny enough, the old boys, UCL old boys. So I've been asking them and picking their brains as much as possible. But to be honest, although I've been doing more since I bought the club, I've been doing it since at least 2012 because as soon as I set the goal to buy a club,
Yeah.
what I tend to do is try and reverse engineer things. So I set the goal and then I work backwards on how I'm going to achieve it. So that's why I started getting involved at Haybridge Swifts. That's why I started getting involved at Chelmsford City. That's why I got on the board at Chelmsford City. That's why I sponsored the club at Chelmsford City, just so I could be involved and learn. And first of all, check that it was something that I definitely wanted to do, and it wasn't just an idea that I thought would be nice and wouldn't be. And then once I decided I wanted to do it, I made a real effort to meet people like Robbie Cowling that owns Colchester and be involved with the board at Chelmsford so I could see how boards run. And so it's been I've ramped it up with the TV and the books in the last month or two, but it's been an ongoing thing for about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, good stuff. You have already touched on this, but I'd be interested in digging in a little bit more. As a businessman, you're obviously an innovator and a real entrepreneur. What's been your experience being parachuted into an environment within the non-league scene that isn't particularly known for being innovative, and what improvements do you think that you can make?
Um, it's been interesting. It's been a little bit like when I first got involved in healthcare. So with healthcare, because of the compliance side of things, they're quite risk averse when it comes to trying new things because you get it wrong, it can kill someone. So there's obviously massive risks involved there. So they don't like taking those sorts of risks. So they'll generally wait for a long time to make sure something's definitely right before they try it. So we suggest new stuff to our clients all the time in healthcare. And you know, typically I think they're maybe 5 years behind the ongoing trends with what they do. It's got a little bit closer sort of since COVID maybe, but there'll be things that you would suggest to clients, and they'd be like, "This is amazing. I've never heard this before. This is great." And you think, well, every other industry's been doing this for 5 years, from what I've seen of the non-league side of things, it's a little bit like that. Not necessarily because of the risk element, but because they've spent all of their time and money and effort on the first team pitch that they've neglected some of the other areas. And so actually you can go in and do some stuff that a Premier League team would do, or a Championship League team would do, or even someone in a different industry would do running a business. And they're like, "Oh, this is great. Why have we never done this before?" And you're like, "No idea." So it looks like, from what I've seen, and I don't want to put all the clubs in the same boat here because I've only spoken to a few clubs and I don't know them very well, so I'm only really talking about Chelmsford. But it looks like everything's just been focused on the first team, and they've really not focused on the commercial side of running a club. And so there's some massive innovations that we can. It's not even really innovations because other people are doing them, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to take the wheel to the club and put the wheel on. So yeah, I think it's a little bit like healthcare in that you can look quite good by doing stuff that isn't really that groundbreaking. It's just doing things as I would call doing them properly.
Yeah. And of course, that commercial revenue into the club's really important. If there are any, business owners, either locally or nationally or even internationally, listening to this interview right now, Spencer, and they're, liking what you're saying and they're thinking about getting involved, what would you want to say to them?
That it's a great time to be involved. I was talking to our head of recruitment for the players, and he was talking to me before I'd taken over the club. But he was like, "Oh, it's really hard to sell the club at the moment because there's takeover, and we haven't got the new kit that we would normally give out to players, and blah blah blah. It's a bit of a hard sell compared to normal." And I said, tell him he's lucky to be here. This is the start of an exciting journey that he can turn around in a few years and say, I was there when this started. And I'd say the same to any commercial sponsors, that if you get in now, this is the start of a really exciting journey. And you're going to get a good deal because, we to be blatantly honest, we just have nowhere near as many sponsors as we should have at this stage. Well, I don't think we've had them for a few years. I know we haven't had them for a few years. So it's a really exciting opportunity to get involved, but not just can we have your money and we want to put it into the first team. It's an exciting opportunity to really build a hub, a commercial hub within Chelmsford of like-minded business people that like sport, in particular football, but not just football, that can come together and socialize as much as just talking about business, but also for the benefit of the community, not just for the men's first team, but for the women's, for the walking football, for the youth teams, for the academy, and for the local residents, and make the whole place a much better place. So yeah, really exciting opportunity. And you talked about internationally as well. Funny enough, I've had people reaching out to me. I've been so busy that I've not got round to doing anything commercially yet because I've been reviewing what we've already got. But I've already had people reaching out to me from Chelmsford locally, but also from Dubai asking how they can be involved because they've heard about what we're doing. I've had people, funny enough, from America that are actually working on a Netflix documentary that want to come over to see the club because they've got connections to the club from years ago, and they've heard that there's an exciting new dawn, and they want to be involved with it. So yeah, it's really exciting time.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, really good stuff. And of course, we'll make sure that we put your contact details for the club in the description below to make it easy for anyone to reach out to you guys if they want to do that and have
Cheers.
that conversation. Spencer, if you could go back just a couple of months when you started, going through the process of getting this deal done, and you could start all over again, would you do anything differently?
Um, yeah, I would. Not massively, but as I said, I tried to buy the club a few years ago, and it went on for 6 months, and I was I don't think I was dealt with in a particularly good way. And to be fair to the outgoing chairman, he apologised for that. Um, but for 6 months, we didn't really make any progress at all, and I spent quite a lot of time and effort trying to make progress, and we didn't make any. So when he approached me this time, I was a little bit wary that it would actually take place. So I didn't really give it 100%. I sort of went along with it and let him lead it a little bit rather than pushing it. Um, and I definitely could have done a lot more prep my side so that when I actually signed on the dotted line, I was ready to go. I could have been doing a lot more research. I've owned the club for over a month. I still don't have access to the bank account because of bank mandates. Long story, I won't bore you with it, but just Barclays Bank have doing things by the book, let's say. Very weird book, but so I've been paying for everything out my own pocket for the last month, including all the payroll and so I could have been doing some of that stuff before, but I didn't want to commit and waste time like last time. So I would change that. I would have put some stuff in place beforehand. But apart from that, no, I don't think I would change much because since we've had the club, I do what I say to everyone that comes to join me in a senior position: is come in for 3 months, spend the first month almost being rude and just observing rather than trying to talk to people and make changes. Not talk to people, but tell them what to do. Then spend the next month looking at what changes we can make, and then spend the third month implementing those changes. And that's what we're looking to do with the club. So I don't think some people think that of that haven't seen what's going on, might think that progress has been slower than they'd expect, but it's a deliberate plan that we're working towards. So I wouldn't change that at all. But yeah, just prep beforehand probably would have been differently.
A lot of the Chelmsford fans who are watching right now are going to be still, on cloud nine after the game last night. And of
Yeah.
course, we know, don't we? Football is a game that brings out so many emotions. As a club owner, how do you handle these? Does a bad result end up ruining your weekend, and are you able to get over it pretty quickly?
Um, I think weirdly it's been a bit easier. So I'm a pretty bad loser uh, at most things, but particularly when I'm watching football. If I'm at Chelmsford or Liverpool, I absolutely hate losing, and I absolutely love winning, and with England, as I'm sure most people do. What I've found since I've owned the club is subconsciously, not consciously at all, but subconsciously, I think I must be looking at it from a more of a season-long perspective, or even a 5, 10 year perspective. That this is just one game. It's very early days. We knew where we were going to be. We can't. One of my favourite sayings is control the controllables. I can't control what happens on the pitch. I can control how we get people onto the pitch, but once they're on there, I can't do anything about that. So I can help create more money so we can get better and better players, or train the players we've got in a better way to get them to a higher standard. Once they're there, I can't do anything about that. So I think I've been thinking that a lot more. Whereas if I'm sat at Wembley watching England, there's absolutely nothing I can do there. So it's just really annoying if we don't win, or really great if we do win. But with Chelmsford, I know I can be making an impact next week and the week after and the week after. So I've actually found it less up and down. As a general rule, it's probably been a little bit more stressful because you know the buck does stop with you at the end of the day, and you've got to have um, you know if we go on a bad run, people are going to start saying to me, "When are you going to sack the manager?" If we go on a really good run, other clubs are going to be saying, "Can we have your manager?" So I'm having to think of all of these things all the time, and I don't necessarily know what the answers are at the moment to those because I've never had to do these things before. So um, there's all that sort of extra stress that you wouldn't normally get watching a game that you've got to consider.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff. You mentioned obviously your engagement with the local area. How important is a community side of running a football club, and how do you hope to impact the local area?
Massively for me, it's I'm as I said, I'm a local lad. I want to leave a legacy. I want to be the person that not only got the team to the best ever position it's been in, but also created something really special in the local area, which I think we can do. Uh, I've got I've got meetings tomorrow and on Friday about our foundation. We've got a football foundation that we set up a year or two ago, and it's still in its infancy, but there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of potential there. And for me, it's really important. When I when I got involved four years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, during COVID, they were short on money, and I offered to come in and sponsor the ground. I was offered the shirt sponsorship, and I said, "Well, look, you've already got a shirt sponsor, so let me take something that isn't being sponsored because it will be additional revenue." So they didn't have a ground sponsor. I know that it's unlikely that I'm going to get any new clients for my healthcare business from sponsoring a football ground. So we worked with the local charity called Kids Inspire, and we called it the EMJ Inspire Stadium to help raise the profile of the charity. And it's a charity that we've been involved with for a long time. It's a local Chelmsford-based charity, although it does national work. But it's by pure coincidence, the football club had been working with them separately. So it's a really nice connection. So there's things like that we want to do a lot more of. It's we do a lot of work in the community with going into schools. We do a thing called Footy, where we provide free food for kids on the local. They come to training sessions and we give them free food. So that's one of the things that the previous chairman did do very well, was to set up some stuff along that side of things, and I'd like to continue that and hopefully take it to the next level.
Yeah. You've mentioned that in your mind, you've kind of framed this as more of a very expensive hobby, but like all great business people, I'm sure that you have an idea of what a successful exit from Chelmsford City will look like one day, hopefully many years from now. What is that, Spencer?
I don't. I hate to sort of contradict you, but I like to be different. So I don't have an exit strategy. I don't have one for my business, and I don't have one for the football team. And um, I quite often get very funny looks when I say that to people, particularly like investors and people like that. And I got so fed up with being asked what my exit strategy was for EMJ over the years, um, that we came up with this. If anyone asks us, we just say it's Project X, and they say, "What's Project X?" And we say, "Well, it's to have EMJ in a good enough position by 2025." So this was a 12-year goal when we set it, but by 2025, that we can float on the stock exchange, we can sell to private equity, we can sell to trade, we can carry on working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or we could be, one day a month as chairman. Doesn't matter, but we've built the business to be good enough that we can do any of those because everyone will want to be involved, so the choice will be ours. So we don't have an exit strategy, but by next year, in fact, by this year, we're in a position we can do any of those things, like golf and buy a football club, for example. So that was the exit strategy for EMJ. Was we don't have one. It's just build a company that's good enough. We can do what we want. And so the football club is very much the same for me. I don't have an exit strategy. Yeah, when we were first buying it, and my wife and kids were asking me, they were like, "Well, how long are you going to do it for?" And I was like, "I don't know, 5, 10 years." And the kids were straight away were like, "No, I want to run this in the future." So this is so we don't have an exit strategy. It's just to leave the club in a better position than we found it. Um, we've got some stepping stones we want to achieve on that, like getting into the football league. Um, there's a the centenary of the club is in 2038. So what we will probably do is look to work with all of the stakeholders. Well, we'll definitely look to work with all the stakeholders, but we'll probably look to put some targets around 2038 and reverse engineer how we get there, which is how I like to do things. Um, so 2038 will be a big year. Whether I'll be there to see that, or whether someone else will achieve the plans that we set out, or whether I'll be there for another 10, 20 years after that, who knows? But we're just looking to leave the club in a better position than we found it.
Great stuff. Really, really good stuff, Spencer. Well, we're going to take a very quick break before coming back to asking you the signature from the club questions.
Traveling to a restrictive country with internet censorship? If you want to access your country's websites and content you love securely, a VPN is the answer. With just a few clicks, NordVPN changes your virtual location. You can enjoy your favorite websites and services securely, as if you're home. Choose from over 5,000 servers in 60 countries and surf the internet with no restrictions.
Well, Spencer, as you know, as a business, we're all about official signed memorabilia. So these questions are all memorabilia related. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Spencer, have you ever asked anyone for their autograph before?
Yeah, I have. Not for a long time. And I was thinking about this. I'm sure I used to as a kid quite a lot, but I couldn't remember anyone. Then I suddenly remembered in 2000, and it would have probably been 2008, possibly nine by the time we did it. I published that City Life annual that I was telling you about. And we did it for a couple of years. But in the first edition, we interviewed Jimmy Greaves because he actually played for Chelmsford City back in the day. And so once I published it, I asked him to sign his article in there. And so that was probably the last time I asked for an autograph, was Jimmy Greaves. And I got that on my site, my copy of City Life.
Ah, great. Yeah, well, what a player he was.
Yeah.
Spencer, in terms of your own collection, do you have any memorabilia? And if you do, what's your favourite piece?
I do, I do. I have quite a bit for two reasons. One, because I love it, and two, my wife works for a charity and they put on black tie dinners and quite often have charity balls. So she asked me to get the auction going, and I sometimes get a little carried away. So I've got quite a bit of stuff. I've got I've got in my office in London, I've got a signed Stephen Gerrard 2005 picture. I've got a signed Kenny Dalglish shirt. Um, in the office here, I've got in front of me up here, I've got a signed 1966 sort of montage of pictures with signed by nine of the players. I've got, I don't know if you can see it, you probably can't see it on the camera. I've got a couple of Jurgen Klopp signed things on either side. That was definitely a can I get the auction going? And I got it going too much and ended up with two of them, two different ones. But um, and I've also got probably my favourite one that I don't have it out on display is again at a charity auction. I've got a signed Liverpool shirt by all the players and Klopp from the year we won the Premier League.
Ah, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
so I've got
Well,
I've
there's a
got a few
few there.
bits. I've
Yeah.
also
So
got
if anyone's got,
I've also got just over my shoulder there the Essex cricket team signed by the whole team. The one the year they won the league a few years back.
fantastic. I thought that
Yeah,
was up there in case you ever had a burglar, Spencer.
he doubles up for that.
Yeah. If you could have anyone's autograph, dead or alive, who would you have and why?
Um, well, I'll give you two. One I'll give you the first one was the first one that came to mind, and that's Sir Richard Branson. Um, Particularly if I could go to Necker Island to get it signed, that would be a bonus. But he's just been an inspiration for me as a business owner. He's been involved with sports. He's dyslexic, which I found out I was about 5 or 6 years ago. Um, Real entrepreneurial spirit in him that I really love. So I'd love to meet him and get the autograph. And then from the sporting perspective, I'd love to get one from Gerard again, even though I've got Gerard's. I've never met Gerard. I've met a few of the others. I've met Kenny and a few of the others, but I've never met Gerard. So I'd love to get Gerard's and have a chat with him as much as anything.
Yeah, a slight diversion, but it's fascinating hearing you talk about having dyslexia because during COVID, I started up a podcast called Talk Business With, and I was interviewing all sorts of big business owners, and I never planned to do it, but there was a common theme coming out of entrepreneurs,
Yeah,
one after another in terms of people being dyslexic, and so I ended up building it into my interviews and was asking people in the end, if you could press a button and actually have this dyslexia removed from you, would you
yeah.
do it? And I was amazed at how many people would say no, because it's actually a superpower. And
Not
you've said
not
it a
yeah.
couple of times before I even knew about that reverse engineering, because they've had to come up with problem solving in a different way.
Yeah.
It's really helped them. What's been your experience with it, Spencer, out of interest?
Yeah, so it's. I mean, not a hope in hell's chance you'd ask me. You'd get me to get rid of it. Yeah, I didn't know I had it until 5, 6 years ago because my two boys got assessed for it. My first one did, and they were telling us all the symptoms. And I was like, yeah, I've got all of those. I wouldn't be surprised if I had dyslexia. Yeah, I'm 49 years old, so it's a bit late to be diagnosed. But then my youngest, when the school said, look, we think he's got it. You should get him assessed. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it for peace of mind. So I went and did a half-day assessment, and at the end of it, the lady said, "Yeah, you're severely dyslexic, but you've found ways of coping with it. So, which is that reverse engineering, problem solving. I see things very differently to a lot of people because of it, and that's where I think you spot opportunities. And as a result, I've learned to cope even better with certain things. I don't, if I'm reading off notes and I have it on white paper, I find it a lot harder than if I have it on coloured paper and just basic things like that. But through doing it, I did some research, and what you said there about the amount of people that have dyslexia that you're interviewing. There's a stat that I've seen that 60% of self-made millionaires in the UK have dyslexia. Now,
Yeah.
that's high, particularly when you consider about 12% of the population has dyslexia. So it's a massive high. But what's quite worrying is that in America on death row, 90% of the people on death row have dyslexia. So it sort of means that you can go one way or the other. If you get good support, you can end up being very successful. If you don't get any support, you basically end up getting in trouble in class because people think you're messing around and they don't give you, the assistance that you need, and so you get thrown out of class. Then you don't go to school. Then you end up in trouble, and so that's why I'm particularly, keen working with people like Kids Inspire and helping children that wouldn't necessarily get the support. Because certainly when I was at school, people didn't really get, diagnosed with dyslexia, so you just got called a bit of a thicko, and you had to deal with it. And it's I was really fortunate that I had a very supportive family to help me, but it can go either way. But would I get rid of it? Not a hope in hell's chance. If I didn't have it, knowing what I know now, I'd be asking for it.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, Spencer, I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Before we let you go, let us know your closing thoughts and also let everyone know how they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the chat. It's always good to do things like this because it makes you think about. I'm always very looking at the future, and I'm just like, what's the next goal? What's the next goal? What's the next goal? And I don't sit back and ever celebrate, but very rarely sit back and celebrate the wins that I've had. And so when you go back and talk about some of this stuff, it reminds you of the successes and the wins. So I've really enjoyed it. So thanks for that. In terms of contacting me, I'm all the social. I say all the social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and a little bit on Twitter. And I don't tend to do a lot of the TikTok stuff. Someone puts videos from YouTube on there for me. But the way to get hold of me is Gold with Gore on YouTube or TikTok, and then Spencer Gore on all the other ones. I think it comes up with. But yeah, happy for anyone
Brilliant.
to reach out.
Well, I'm going to go and make sure that I find all of those links. I'm going to put them in the description below. So make sure that you follow Spencer on all of the platforms that you're currently on, and go and say hello and ask him any other questions that we haven't covered on the interview today. Spencer, we're going to have to do this again in 12 months' time so we can review how the season's gone and we can look back at it. It'll be really fun to do that.
That would be really good. Yeah, I definitely look forward to that. Definitely. We get Simon on as well, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be good. We'll do that. Yeah, definitely. Spencer, thanks a lot for your time. It's been great.
Thanks, David. Cheers.